Everybody who's anybody in the country is going to go to Florida. They're going to go to Georgia now for recruits. South Carolina, obviously, right in the middle of SEC country, is going to do that as well. So no big surprise. Kilgore from Georgia. The DC area is always plentiful too. You got Sandy, the safety from South Carolina, or from DC for Shane Beamer with 8 hard commits. Do you see Shane Beamer with any different ties to different areas, different approach compared to Will Muschamp?
Yeah, Mark, that's a great question. And again, I think you saw this last year. And what's so great about this staff, again, like I mentioned, they're so versatile. And it's a really interesting topic, by the way, Mark, because I got a good friend of mine that works on the staff at Georgia. Not like any inside ties or anything, but he's a good buddy of mine. We were childhood friends, but he works on the recruiting side of things. And I've asked him about this, like, how important is in-state recruiting? Because everybody wants to talk about, we want to own the state. We want to put up a border, put up a fence around our state. And he told me, he said, Chris, as great as it is, the goal is to go out and get the 25 best football players you can, right? I mean, you want to keep your top guys home that are in your state, but you want to go get the best players. You don't just want to sign 25 guys because they're from your state, right? So I look at South Carolina, again, there's a lot of versatility. We've seen them go out to like Oklahoma. We've seen them go to Louisiana. We've seen them, of course, Florida, Georgia, but then we've seen them go to Delaware, Pennsylvania. I mean, Keenan Nelson Jr. is from Philadelphia, right? A defensive back, 4-star kid you signed last year. I think it's going to play a ton this year, make an impact. So we've seen them go all over. Of course, you want to get the guys in state and South Carolina, your top guys. You want to keep them home. The state of North Carolina, Charlotte specifically, has been very, very big for the Gamecocks historically. And I think beating UNC in that bowl game, by the way, was very big for recruiting and just sort of changing the narrative. A lot of kids were going to UNC, and Mac Brown was able to pull in these top classes. But we've seen South Carolina go sort of all over. So, I mean, heck, we've seen, Mark, in the past years, Carolina pull guys from the state of California. So I think this staff certainly understands, and especially, with the way recruiting's evolved and everything's on social media and you can see guys from all over the country, you're not so locked in on your region. I think Shane Beamer and this staff has shown more than a willingness to, and I think they've urged it to get outside of the state of South Carolina and go get top guys because, let's face it, there are a lot of really good football players in the state of Georgia, Florida, Texas, right, all across the Southeast, even in the Midwest. And you can't just simply make a living recruiting guys in the state of South Carolina. I mean, let's call a spade, Mark. One thing Will Muschamp was able to hang his hat on was that, we're dominating in-state recruiting. We're getting these top guys in state. You know why that was, Mark? Because Clemson didn't have to. Because Clemson became a national brand, and they were getting the number one player from the state of Ohio. They were getting the number one player from the state of Alabama. They didn't have to depend on in-state, and that's to take nothing away from them when they got those guys. But, Mark, I think you hear what I'm saying in the sense of, like, if Clemson wanted those guys, they probably would have got them, or at least the majority of them. So I don't think it's as simple as, we're just dominating in-state recruiting. We're doing great things. Yes, you want to keep those top in-state guys home. You hate to see those guys go to a Georgia, go to a Tennessee, go to a Florida, what have you. And I thought it was a really interesting conversation. I think last week it was that Marcus Lattimore went on his podcast, the Believe podcast, I believe it's called, with Mike Yuva. And they talked about his recruiting, right? Because we're in that season. We're in recruiting season. And Lattimore talked about when he was recruited, he was going to go to Tennessee. And his reasoning was because at that time, top prospects in the state of South Carolina did not go to South Carolina. So it's important to keep those guys home, especially when you've got talents like a Lattimore that are in state. But what I love about what Shane Beamer and this staff have done, again, they've shown more than a willingness to get outside of it. And I think their recruiting footprint's kind of all over. You think back to Beamer's ties at Oklahoma, right? Being in the Big 12, being in that region of the country. And I think that certainly helps South Carolina, again, to just go out. It's not all about just putting a border around your state. While that's important, it's about going and finding the best 20 to 25, maybe more football players that are going to help you win games in the long run.